All right, guys, I promised you that once we got through homiletics, every single one of you has actually what you need to complete your devotionals. Something that I'm going to do throughout the creation of this holy, whole, and fit devotional is I'm actually going to be working with a verse. Some of you might have this verse in the book, and if you do, that's okay because as you're going to see from what I do with the homiletics versus what you do, you might end up having a completely different focus within that verse than the one that I'm going to cover here. So the verse that I'm working with is 1 Corinthians 9:24 through 27, and this is the English Standard Version translation that I'm using. Do you know that in a race all the runners run, but only one receives the prize? So run that you may obtain it. Every athlete exercises control in all things. They do it to receive a perishable wreath, but we an imperishable. So I do not run aimlessly. I do not box as one beating the air, but I discipline my body and keep it under control, lest after preaching to others, I myself should be disqualified. Now, when it comes to homiletics, it's really about digging in, and I'm going to open this up just a little bit more. I saw the top of my board was missing there. It's really about digging into to the verse and getting as much out of God's word as we in our human minds are able to do. So the way it was originally once described to me is like an hourglass. God pours all of his information up here, but we, in our minds, in our finite minds, have this level of interpretation. However, with this level of interpretation, we can have all of this poured out in the form of application. That's what homiletics is all about. Homiletics is about writing or preaching God's word. That is what the actual definition of homiletics is. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take this verse. It's 3 little verses. And you're going to see how much that you can get out of this by walking through the 10 steps of homiletics. Now, you might go online and find that there are people that have 9 steps, 8 steps, really all the way down to 6 steps that people will look at this as. So we're going to walk through 10 steps in a very advanced way. And then what I'm supplying to you are a totally separate verse done by a totally separate person so that you can see what that person did with homiletics as well. And you're also receiving the blank homiletics walkthrough so that you can go through this again and again. Use this as you study the Bible. You're going to take this way beyond the few devotional. What's more is you're not going to listen to your pastors the same way anymore. You're going to hear all of these division breakdowns, all of these principle breakdowns when you start to practice homiletics on your own. So the first thing that we're going to do when we go through homiletics is I want you to think about something that is a personal feeling right now. I don't mean overall your whole life. I mean right now. What are you going through? What are you thinking? What are you feeling? That is going to significantly affect the way that you approach the verse, what you see in the verse, all of those things. If you're going through a loss, you can't help but find healing in the words to get over that loss. If you're in a triumphant moment, you might find things that are showing you how to bring purpose to that moment to grow God's kingdom. So whatever it is that you're feeling, that's your first step. It has, what's going on today? What prayers and praises are on your mind? That's how we open with the homiletics so that you're able to focus a little bit on what God is going to try to talk to you and say to you through the word. So that's what I did. For me, I said I'm overwhelmed by a lack of space in my life and relationships. Those of you who follow my blog know that I said space is my word of the year for 2018. And I need space. I need space in my life. I need space in my calendar. I need space in my relationships. And I'm really feeling a need for that. And I'm feeling impatient, quite frankly, with my ability to achieve that. And achieve that in my timeline instead of God's. How often do we all feel that, correct? So that's where I'm at right now. Now we're going to talk about what you actually do with your verse once you've reflected on what is that verse and what am I feeling. So the first thing that you're going to do Again, step 1 is all about this personal question. Step 2 through 4 are all related to the content. In other words, they are related directly to the verse from God. All of this is still up here. This is still all God's information. So step 2 is about identifying the actual verse. So I went through and I broke the verse up. As you see, we only had 3 different actual verses, 4, 24, 25, 26, and 27. However, I broke it up into many more pieces than that. I have 24a. Do you know that in a race, all the runners run? 24b, so this is our second one. The runners run, but only one receives the prize. That's 24b, but only one receives the prize. 24c, so this is our third one. So run that you may obtain it. 25a, every athlete exercises control in all things. 25b, so we're on our 5th one already. They do it to receive a perishable wreath. 25c, so we're up to 6. But we an imperishable. 26a, so I do not run aimlessly. 26b, I do not box as one beating the air. 27a, but I discipline my body and keep it under control. And 27b, lest after preaching to others I should be disqualified. So I've actually broken up these 4 verses into 10 pieces of content. So I have the verses down. I would actually write on my sheet. I'm going to write in here. I'm going to write in the verse. I'm going to put 24 A, B, C, D, all the way through, 27. I have 24A through 27B. I'm actually going to put that verse here. If you have really great writing, or if you want to play with this in Word, and because I'm giving this to you guys in Word so that you can actually edit it as well and make it your own, feel free to make this larger, and you can actually write the words of the verse. You can actually say the topic or event that's going on next. So I usually write the verse here in this first one, and then I write the words for it in this topic or event. This is what's going on in that verse. Important words with variations. So the variations piece I'm going to talk about in just a second. But what I did, I picked again the English Standard Version. Because of that, my interpretation might be a little bit different than yours. You might have different things standing out to you if you're reading the Message, if you're reading NIV, if you're reading NLT, if you're reading KJV. Something different might stand out to you depending on what translation. For me, there were certain words that really stood out, and I've boxed them here. Do you know in the race that all the runners run? So it's like everybody's going to do this. That stood out to me. Only one. That stood out to me. You can see some of my impatience in this. I'm like, well, how come that person has their space in their life? How come that person has this time in their relationships? I'm feeling like I'm in this race and other people are getting it. This is how sometimes when I'm studying the Bible, I start out in kind of not a great place, and then I finish in a great place later. So we're going to get down to that. So all, only one, you. So once we went to God, it's like it's talking to me. Control stood out to me. Perishable. We, again, this was relational in the Bible. That stood out to me. Imperishable stood out to me. Aimlessly. The air, discipline, and disqualified. Those things all stood out to me. I'm going to talk to you about why they stood out to me when I get into another section a little bit further down here. But what I did is I went through and I took all of these words that when I read that verse, they stood out to me. Something we're going to work on it in a later lesson is I'm actually going to have you do things. Let's say just a piece of this. So run that you may obtain it. Let's take that piece, and something that you can do to determine what stands out for you when you're doing homiletics is you can actually break it up and do emphasis on each run, on each word. So, run that you may maintain it. Is that so important to you? Because you're like, it's a command. So do it. So run that you may maintain it. Is run important? Get in this race right now. So actually, by the way, goes with that. You could say so that. Anytime you see so that in the Bible, it's kind of a conditional. It's like, if you do this, you're going to get this. Run so that you may obtain. So run that you, in other words, this is for you, the person that's reading it. Maybe that's what stood out to you. So run that you may obtain it. In other words, it's not possible unless you're doing it, unless you're in the race. So run that you may obtain it. So if you're emphasizing that obtain, maybe you're really thinking about holding that, getting the grasp, really just grabbing on for dear life. If you really emphasize that word obtain, you're going to have an emphasis that's about holding on, and it's got a stronger emphasis maybe than somebody who's just jumping into the race. It doesn't matter, there's not a right or wrong, it's just where that emphasis, what word is standing out to you. God will make the right word stand out to you. And then, so run that you may obtain it, the eternal gift, the gift of forever life with Jesus. So if you're looking at these verses that you're working with and you say, I'm not sure which word really stands out to me, that's a quick verbal out loud, yes, out loud, exercise that you can do to determine what word is standing out to me. Now, I said in this, you want to do your important words and the variations. So let's say that there is a word that really is resonating with me. Do you know that in a race all the runners run? And I'm picking a word from here, and I'm going to pull it up on my Bible app here. I had it in here, and now I got to get back up again. So I'm going to do this as quick as I can here. Sorry. You know what I'm going to do? I'm actually going to pull it up right here. So I won't see you, but you should be able to see me here for a moment. So I'm going to actually change this translation here really quick. And what you can do is, if there's a word that's really important to you, you might want to say, look up a different translation. You might say, I really loved this verse, and that word obtain was that word that stood out to me. Well, guess what? As I looked at NIV, the New International Version, instead of looking at the ESV, what I see is here, it says, but only one receives, I apologize. I was looking at the wrong piece. Let's find a different version here. So if I'm looking at a more traditional version, let's say I'm looking at King James Version. Nope, don't like that one either. We're getting there. Here's a good one. All right. This is an interesting translation in the King James Version. Here we have the line that says, every athlete exercises control in all things. In the King James Version, see, I circled the word control. I'm like, that word really stood out to me. Well, what if I'm really into that word? I want to feel why that word stands out to me. I want to know what the other translations say. And we're going to talk about etymology later. We're going to talk about emphasis later. But for now, let's just look to a different translation of the Bible. So in the King James Version, that actually says, every man that striveth for the mastery is temperate in all things. That's a hugely different translation for what those words are. And so in this case, if this is, he's exercising control, striveth for mastery. What's interesting about that is, as I'm really looking at that exercising control, and this is striveth for mastery, notice in the ESV, we're doing it. We're exercising that control. In the King James Version, we're striving for it. So the truth is, in this initial race that's being described, it's going to stand out to me as, in a certain translations, when you're going back to that word for word translation, all of a sudden it's like, we're not quite there yet. So any of these words that stand out to you, you've written them down, you've got your verses, you've got your topic. In my case, I choose to take that topic piece and write the piece of the verse. So I do the number breakdown, I do the topic, I write the actual words, then I'm going to do the focus words. And for some of those focus words, I might choose in that column to write down those things which have different meanings in different translations and how that affects it. It's really important for you to do that to kind of get the most you can out of those papers. So I got to grab my papers, which fell down here, because we're going to move on. So these were step one. Where are you at in your life? Step 2, the verse. So it's you're going to break up the verse. You've got the verse broken up. You've got what is in those verses. That's step 3. And you've got those words that stand out. That's step 4. We're still up here in God's information. Step 5 is the divisions. Divisions is, again, remember, we're getting narrower and narrower. We're trying to get down here to where we can actually comprehend it in our small, little human ways. So the divisions are taking all these things that stood out to you and putting it into 4 concepts. It's going to be 4 things that we think we are supposed to be taught through these verses here. So the way it says is combine items from your content into similar themes or ideas. So what I did is I looked at all of those words that I pointed out, and I decided what all kind of ties together. So for my first one, I picked that word all. So here all are running, but only one, yet you, meaning talking to me, we, meaning I'm part of a community. It went from one in man's race to everybody in God's race. In God's race, all can win. That's how I came up with that division. I looked at those things that stood out to me, and I decided, what is it that I can say specifically in one quick theme? Similar idea from those 4 words. The second thing I looked at is perishable versus imperishable. Those were 2 words that stood out to me. God's race offers a forever prize. It's a forever prize. It's not perishable. That's the big thing. So in God's race, all can win. God's race offers a forever prize. That third thing, I tied several words together. I tied aimlessly, I tied the air, I tied disqualified. Those are my 3 words for there. And on this one, I was really actually picturing a race, and I was picturing a race path. So let me tell you about how I looked at these. When I was thinking about aimlessly, that's like bright, shiny object. I'm on my race here, I'm going along, and oh, let me go see what's over here. Did you miss me? All right, well, God misses us too when we do that and we wander off the path. So when I thought about aimlessly, I thought about my eyes aren't on the prize, I'm getting distracted by things. That's how I was looking at being aimless. So the air, one beating the air. Now, of course, Paul here, he's talking about, shadow boxing. He's like, but of course, from the perspective of a race, I was actually picturing how when you are annoyed by things. So again, here I am. I'm running along, and there are all these little gnats. So beating the air to me was kind of like those totally unimportant things that we let get in the way. So I'm running along, and I run into this swarm of mayflies or gnats. And instead of staying on my path, I'm just sitting here, I'm going like this. And how many times do you find yourself in your life doing that? You're beating away at things that are in the air, that are unimportant, that are not really going to affect you, but you're letting them affect your race. That was the beating the air. That's how I saw that. Then, that third word that I've tied to my third division is that word disqualified, because guess what? If I've stopped back here because I'm beating the air, if I've wandered off of the path, those are all things that are keeping me from God's path for me, from God's race, and from that ultimate prize that forever prize that I can get from God. Because God actually wants us to enjoy the forever prize right here on earth. Meaning that as long as I'm in this race, I'm on that right path. I'm on that path with God. I'm living a purposeful life. I'm doing the right things. So, by combining my thoughts on as I was looking at this and aimlessly and talking about beating at the air and talking about not wanting to be disqualified, my third division became do not be distracted from the straight path. So distracted by big things that pull me away, by little things that are in my way but aren't important, or anything that's going to take me away from the race with God. My fourth division, I combined different words. So now, one of the things I hope that you guys are noticing is while I've looked at this whole verse, I broke it up into content, but the things that I'm picking into my different divisions of the content aren't necessarily all from the exact same place. Like that was from several different places. The air and aimlessly and disqualified. Notice there's another word in there in between. That's okay if that goes into a different division. So my fourth one is discipline and control. And I put those two words together. And I was thinking about this as a whole. And I said, we are God's athletes, equipped with the discipline to finish strong. Now, I was looking up here, and when you look back at that word that we talked about in King James Version, how they strive for mastery as opposed to exercise control, this all of a sudden starts to make even more sense. I'm sitting here saying, okay, but I'm God's athlete. Guess what? I do have what it takes to stay on the path because that's where God wants me. He is my coach in this race. So I know I am equipped in order to have the discipline, because I need discipline to stay the course and stay in God's race. So those are my four divisions. That's how I broke that down. In yours, what you can do is you can look at your different content lines, and you're actually going to say, these are the content lines I'm kind of combining, or if you want to say specific words from that, and then you're going to write your divisions down. Again, you do have this blank to be able to play with. So now we're right here. We're at the end of our God's information before we start to apply it to our life. So God's information, this is where we're going to create what we call our theme sentence. I'm going to read exactly what it says here. This sentence is the narrow end of your funnel on the information side. What is one sentence that summarizes all of the divisions that you identified? It says in step 2. That should say step 5. Sorry about that. So I'm looking at this. In God's race, all can win. God's race offers a forever prize. Do not be distracted from the straight path. We are God's athletes, equipped with the discipline to finish strong. I put that all together. I have one 12-word sentence because I'm a little bit wordy too, just like I know some of you are. So if I'm told 8 to 12 words, it's going to be 12. God offers an eternal prize to all who run in his race. That, to me, was the theme of this verse. So notice, though, how much meat is packed in tightly behind that theme. If you were just to come out and somebody said this, but you hadn't done all of this work, it's not making a whole lot of sense. So, from a devotional perspective, what you've created at this point is you have your verse, and then you make a statement. God offers an eternal prize to all who runs in his race. But you're going to want to bring in something personal and something relatable and practical for the readers. That's where the bottom of this hourglass comes in. It's time for us to take God's information and filter it and push it out into our lives through application. So the opening side of our funnel, the application side, is we go from God's truth, the theme, to God's desire. That's how you look at it. Moving from the theme to the goal. God's truth is the theme. God's desire, and this would be to us, and this would be for us. God's truth to us is that theme sentence. God's desire for us is the goal. God wants us to stay the course for the prize. Simple. Again, this is a one sentence thing. But if you went up and you told somebody God wants us to stay the course for the prize, that's not going to mean a lot to them unless they can see some of the reason behind it. So again, in your devotional now, you have your verse. Then you're going to say, God offers an eternal prize to all who run his race. And he wants us to stay the course for the prize. All of a sudden, we're like, all right, I've got my verse. I've got my thought that I'm trying to teach the people that are reading this. But now I have to get a little bit personal with them. So everything that was on the information side has something in the reverse on the application side. So our goal mirrors our theme. Now we have to move back into opening it back up. Our application is you're going to take, and you can place these as, it says application questions. The truth is it doesn't have to be a question. I'm going to take these same 4 things and I'm going to flip them into questions for you so that you can see. But these are mirroring this. So you're going to look at division 1 and you're going to find an application for our life, a direction for our life. In God's race, all can win. Have you chosen to enter God's race? That's the question. God's race offers a forever prize. Are you focusing on the temporary things? Do not be distracted from the straight path. Are you getting distracted by little things in life? We are God's athletes, equipped with the discipline to finish strong. Do you see the victory on God's path? So I know I'm telling you things, I'm taking these statements on the application side and I'm flipping them into a question format. I imagine that you can picture yourself now sitting in your church and hearing the pastor ask you some of these questions. So when you're talking about those gnats that are getting in the way, it's like, let's talk about what are some of the gnats in your life? You spilled coffee on your work shirt. You arrived late. There was a train. These are the gnats. They get in the way. Let's talk about what some of those aimless things are, those things that take you off. Are you being distracted by chasing money when it doesn't align to what your values are? That's maybe a bigger thing. It's going to take you off the path. Bottom line is, God is trying to teach us something. So as a pastor, they can bring in the life application questions. They're going, so my statements were choose to enter God's race, stop focusing on the temporary things, don't sweat the small stuff, there is victory in sight. But I'm going to place questions on you through that application questions piece. So, as I said, everything on the information side has an inverse on the application side in homiletics. So as we're looking at this and we are looking back to our information side, I can take the I can and I will statements, and this is the kind of thing that you really want to dig in. And you're going to actually put some goals out to somebody who's hearing your message, whether they're reading it or hearing it from you spoken. So do you know that in a race, all the runners run? So you can be like, I can run in just any old race if I want. I can participate in something alongside everybody else. Because all, for me, that word all was a big deal. So as I'm looking at my space piece, I might think to myself, oh, I need to do this piece because everybody else is doing it. That might be what I'm thinking. I might say, oh my gosh, I need to go to that networking group because that's what I should do as a business owner. All runners are in that race. But only one receives the prize. Yeah, but who's walking away from that networking engagement with the contact that's going to sign up with their business? One person maybe. You know, I'm going to this huge authors conference, or I'm going to a pitch session as an author, and I'm there with 40 other people and only one person is going to be hired. What if it's not me? So I might think of that. So I can go ahead and hop into everything else with everybody else. You know, is everyone else going to do it? But so run that you may obtain it. So now I want to do something that's going to, okay, what am I going to do differently? I can do something different so that the prize I win matters. I can work on books that are going to grow God's kingdom. I can work with God-honoring people. I can work with value-focused people. See how you can make this really personal? So then our flip side on every athlete exercises control in all things. Now I want to think about this one a little bit. I might not have an immediate inverse, like I can or I will. You know, gosh, I have God with me because if I'm looking back at my divisions, I'm God's athlete equipped with the discipline. So no, I know I can do this because I'm not in that room alone giving my pitch. I've got God with me. So then I'm going to look up at the next thing. They do it to receive a perishable wreath. And he's going to be behind me because when I'm working for him, it's going to grow his kingdom and his hand is on it. It's his will, not my timing. All of a sudden, it starts to get applied differently. But we can receive an imperishable. At the end of the day, if I'm growing his kingdom, I know that I have a bigger prize waiting for me than some pitch that I didn't make here. Remember, that's the little things. Those are the gnats, right? So I do not run aimlessly. Remember, this is the one I thought about getting distracted from the path. So this is going to be, I will go after things. Let's put it into a positive as opposed to an I'm not. I will go after things that are God-honoring. That's the whole prayer. God, help me to chase after what is in line with you. You know, it's about that search my heart so that I'm in line with you. It's God's will, right? Then we've got to do let's see here. I do not box as one beating the air. I'm not going after things that aren't going to be valuable to this run. I discipline my body and keep it under control. So I'm going to need to do things. I'm going to pray and be alongside you to do this. Lest after preaching to others, I myself should be disqualified. I know that at the end of the day, God, you're at this finish line. So I will be patient for the prize. So you're really going to take it and you're going to break it down, and you can make this really relatable to something very personal in your life. You can say, for me, as I'm looking at this, one of the things that's step 10 is to look back again and think about it, and about being overwhelmed by the lack of space in my life and relationships. For me, that wasn't really a feeling or reflection that was based on this specific verse. This specific verse is about, running our race with God, exercising our faith. But where I was at wasn't thinking about that. I was thinking about relationships. I was thinking about space in my life. And when I got through this, that post-reflection piece that I could do in my homiletics, it's really about saying, you know what? I'm not really without enough space in my life. God gives me enough space. I just need to let go of the gnats in my life and stay true just to those things that are in line with God. And that's what I'm going to ultimately get out. So now let's talk about your devotional. So in your devotional, you're going to have your verse. You're going to say, do you ever feel overwhelmed by a lack of space in your life? Well, God offers an eternal prize to all who run in his race, and he wants us to stay the course for that prize. Perhaps you are letting too many things get in your way, the aimlessly in the air, the gnats and the things, to take you away from God's purpose for you. Are you allowing yourself to be distracted by, whatever that little thing is? And then you would share a little anecdote. You would share something about yourself. Say, I remember when I was raising my daughter and everybody else was getting in the weekly mom play date, and I just didn't have time to do that. I knew that little Maria was she was in school and her social engagements were just fine, but I felt all of this pressure to also bring her to the park play date. I realized at the end of the day that what Maria really needed was me and was time with her mom. And when I was able to let go of that distraction, of that wandering, of the gnats, the voices that were telling me that I should be taking her to these extra things and piling more on my plate. When I was really able to let go of the distraction of things that filled our time but weren't necessary, and of the noise, the gnats, of other mothers wondering whether I was doing well, I was able to focus on and engage in our time even more, recognizing that I had more space in my life than I needed. God is enough. He gives us enough. And then I would offer a prayer at the end of that devotional. I would say, God, I ask that you take from me all of those things that are like gnats in my ears, distracting me from your path and the course that leads to you. I know that as a parent, I will make mistakes, but as long as that I am continuously honoring you in the decisions I make with my child, I am trying to bring her alongside me on that path. I thank you for watching over me. I thank you for giving us this eternal prize. And I ask that you continue to work on my patience, that I might revel in the space and the time that you give us. And I pray all this in your Son's name. Amen. So I just kind of walked through a devotional. I walked through homiletics and how homiletics can actually translate to that devotional. I hope this has helped. In addition to the long version of them that you have here, I'm looking for my short version. It's somewhere. You guys are going to have a 10-step where it doesn't go in all the detail, but it's just a breakdown. Here are the 10 things. Homiletics. So there are really, even though I'm calling it 2 versions, it's really 3 versions. So you have the really advanced version that's going to be in there. You can walk through it like we did here in great detail. There's the 10 questions, which really takes those same 10 steps, but it asks them in a very short manner of way of speaking. And then below that, there's even a 5 question. That's the one that we went through in the live community builder last night. And that one will walk you into this same kind of path, but you're going to find, I think, as a Christian woman, as a woman who wants to be in the Word, and as a woman who wants to grow holy, whole, and fit with God, that this method, the advanced homiletics method, is something that you're going to get a lot out of, hopefully for years to come, and maybe even for the rest of your life. I hope you enjoy homiletics. I'm tired, so I I'm going to go crash for the night. I apologize that these are getting out to you ladies late, and hopefully that's the last of our technical difficulties. Have a great day. Enjoy your homiletics as you are continuing to select your verses for a few words on becoming holy whole.